Hey everybody, Jay Weidner, Reality Check. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, hit like, and all that other stuff. I've been on for 2 months, and a lot of people have been concerned about me, and I just want to assure you that I'm very healthy. Knock on wood. Knock on wood, and I'm healthy, but you know, anything can change in a moment. I'm thankful for all the concern. I don't know who's spreading the rumors around, but what I've been doing is basically running my ranch, growing my food, and traveling around Colorado. And what I found is that Colorado, I would say in the 48 contiguous states, that California still rates, no matter what the politics are, as the most beautiful state. It's got Yosemite, Big Sur, it's kind of Shasta. It's kind of hard to beat California, but Colorado has to be second. I mean, for pure beauty, I mean, the Grand Mesa and up in Breckenridge area, the mountains there are just unbelievable. And so I just been feasting on Colorado for the whole summer, traveling everywhere and having a really nice time, taking photographs and videos and seeing friends and growing my own food, which has also been quite an ordeal. So anyway, also the last 2 months have been so tumultuous. So much has gone down in the last 2 months. 2 months ago might as well have been 20 years ago at this stage. So the last show I did was with Johnny Enoch. We talked about this is the event. In other words, this event that we're going through is the event that we've all been waiting for, is where I'm going with all this. And we're now the pedals to the metal. The event is now speeding so quickly that things are happening so fast. People are saying things that make me think that maybe the world's become mentally unbalanced. It seems as if the archons are in full force and making people do things. Just today on my Facebook page, I posted a story about a protester who stole a police horse and basically ran it into the ground, broke its feet. And I just, you know, I'm a guy who just can't stand animal cruelty, and just broke my heart. And so when I see that, and then he denies that he was cruel to the animal and that he did it for the children, I knew that there's something amiss in this world. So anyway, I think it's only proper and right that I bring back, since it's the equinox or near the equinox, I bring back Robert Phoenix for our quarterly updates. I'm sure he has a lot to add to everything. I'm glad I don't live in the city. I can tell you that. After seeing what I've been seeing and going up to Denver last week, just, my God, it's unbelievable. Just unbelievable. I can't even tell you what the cities are actually 10 times worse than the country. So Robert, how are you?
Yeah, Jay. Well, I'm glad you're back, contrary to popular rumor. Good to see you. Good to be here. I'm well. And like yourself, I do not live in the city. I live in a semi-rural area where, for the most part, people are, uh, how do I say this? Basically sane. Although every time I walk into our local grocery store and see the number of masked people, I tend to question the sort of how do I say this, the temerity of humanity in what we're able to actually put up with or put down. And, I had a really interesting experience a couple of days ago on my show that I do Monday through Thursday. And I found this video, and it was from a school down by Corpus Christi. It was an elementary school. And they basically outlined how they're going to deal with, the COVID issue with their kids going back to school. And it was one of the most frightening videos I've ever seen. I
Really?
mean, they have the kids basically lined up 6 feet apart by number before school. They walk them in and they stand by their locker until they are supposed to get the go ahead and then go to their class. They walk one way and then the other way inside the school. They're in these things called pods. And the pod is sort of like this self-contained unit. They're all on computers, by the way. And the teachers basically walk from pod to pod checking their computer work, okay? And they're wearing masks even though they're in the pod. And instead of going from classroom to
Uh,
classroom, the teachers now go from classroom to classroom, and they are brought their lunches by the lunch staff, and they eat in their pod. Now, when they leave to go to the restroom, they have to check out with the teacher. The teacher actually enters when the student is checking out. When they go to the bathroom, there is a staff member waiting for them at the bathroom. And the staff member, when it is clear, will check them in, and then they are checked out again. Now, they are given 2 periods of mask-free time, I guess yard time, as they would call it in the big house. And they can take their masks off outside, but they must continue to maintain social distance, right?
oh, crap.
So what I did is I called the school, and this is real time, and I pretended to be somebody from another school district. And it's in Texas, you only need one party consent to actually tape a recording. So I basically told the guy how impressed we were with their measures, so
That's
that would get him to talk more, which is true.
right.
And there were a couple of things that were quite interesting that came out of that conversation. Number one, I asked him if they had consulted with any therapists about the long-term effects of children with isolation and wearing masks, and he said no.
No.
And I thought that's really interesting. Then I asked him, what about kids that don't go along with the program? What do you do with those kids? And he said, well, the special needs kids, we separate them out. And I thought, wow, this is really interesting. So he's identifying the problem students as special needs kids.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow. So does that make us all non-mask wearers, special needs kids, right? And then I asked him, I said, well, in our district, we've had people talk about supplementation with minerals and vitamins and things like that. Have you guys had that discussion? Oh no, I've never heard anything about that. So I basically got him to spill the beans, and you can tell that this was probably, like, theoretically not a bad person, like not a malevolent person, but clearly an order taker. And this to me is quite disturbing, and that people are just sort of signing off on this idea of this pandemic. And by the way, if you wanted to, you could approach any county health official, or any mayor, and demand to see the peer review study for their findings, and they won't be able to deliver them at all, which basically means that they're perpetuating a fraud. And if enough people did that and called them on that, they would start to shake, rattle, and roll. But they're basically investing in this idea that people will willfully and blindly consent. And the longer people wear the mask, the easier it is for them to get them to consent to things.
Yeah, there's no doubt there's a larger agenda at work here, that this is just a cover for. I really don't. We've had both Johnny Enoch talking about this idea that they're going to put CRISPR nanotechnology into the vaccines, and they're going to rearrange our genome. And more I look into it, the more I realize that that's actually exactly what's going on, which is why the head of the vaccine project is a guy who ran a software company, not a doctor, not anybody he doesn't even have a degree. He dropped out of Harvard after 6 weeks or something. So we got a guy without a degree who ran a crappy software company who's actually telling us how the vaccines are going to work. And now we realize, of course, it would be a high-tech dude that would be behind it, because he's probably quite invested in the CRISPR technologies and all the rest, probably one of the biggest backers, I don't know. And we have that going on. And then we have the riots, which were not really happening too much 2 months ago when I decided to take a hiatus. And now they're everywhere. And what was interesting is that, and I mean this sincerely, I went up to a beautiful cabin up in the woods, and I watched the Democratic National Convention. And I watched it because I wanted to know what they were planning for us. What is your plan for the future for us? And I have to say that I watched the entire convention, and I didn't hear a plan,
There's no
and
plan.
at all. And
No.
but I did see and hear kind of support for the people burning down the cities, which I thought was strange that they're running on that, thinking that we actually support that and they're going to get votes that. Then I realized, of course, what probably everyone else has realized, but I didn't because I'm not on Twitter, is that there must be in some kind of Twitter echo chamber bubble where they're only hearing from the same people. And Dorsey, of course, has stopped anybody, left of right of, center, not allowed to have a voice. And so the only voices that are heard are the echo chamber voices. And so they must think or have thought that that was the right way to go down. And then it felt like about 2 weeks or 3 weeks after the Democratic convention, like the headwinds have shifted somehow. You just felt it. Just felt people that people. You just felt like people have had it. They've just had it. They're done. And I don't know where it's going to go. I know that the mail-in balloting is going to screw up the election, so we can pretty much be assured that we're not going to know who the president is for months. We have the danger of Pelosi declaring herself president because she's third in line, and that crazy woman would do it. So, and then she would order the military to take Trump out of the White House. That's one of the scenarios that's going on, and so we're reaching this point where it's going to be civil war. And I don't know what to say. People are running out of the cities so fast. The land value in my area has almost doubled to buy a lot in my area. That's not to say the houses are gone. As soon as the house goes up for sale, it's gone. And then they're all coming from 3 primary places. California, I'll do it in what I think is the right order. Texas, it seems to be the biggest exodus here in Colorado, then Florida, and then California. So we have these 3 huge states, and the people are pouring in, and they're bringing the politics that they had back there here, and it's really frightening because they're not like coming here and being survivalists and everything. They're coming here to change this place into what they just left, not realizing that was exactly what made those places get sour. Now, Texas is not as bad as California and Florida. California is by far the worst, and those people are crazy and nutty. The Texans that have moved here, for the most part, I've met are actually pretty good people. They're definitely a little more willing to take care of themselves, less willing to go on the welfare and everything. But the dang Californians, man, they're just pouring in here like crazy, and they seem determined to change us into California, and we are. Colorado's gone from red to purple to blue, and and so we're in that stage. The interesting thing about Colorado is that our governor is a liberal, but he's also a libertarian, and so that actually is good. So he opened up all the businesses really almost right away, and kind of is not paying attention to the mask thing too much and all that, which is unusual for a liberal governor. But other than that, man, I think we're going crazy. I think that they've made us mentally ill. And this description of this school that you're talking about, my God, I would get my kid out of that school in a split second.
In a heartbeat, really in a heartbeat. And the problem is with the alternative. The alternative is you keep your kid home, but now the school has an eye into your home, right? And they can see what's going on in the background. And there have been cases already where there was a boy who had a BB gun that was on a desk, by the camera, and they sent the cops over to his place. Okay. So, there's this whole other kind of agenda of, the all-seeing eye looking in. And, you're not going to get quality education. You're going to be isolated and disconnected from your peer group. I mean, so one of the things that I've been looking at, and Jay, to your point, like we're going through this whole Gemini thing to bring some astrology into this. We got the true node in Gemini, and what we're seeing is both decentralization happening at a certain level.
Right.
But then I think we're also going to witness a centralization of power simultaneously.
Agreed.
So this is what's going to really flip people out, and the decentralization will be the balkanization of the states. The United States is being balkanized right now before our very eyes, and this is what's going on. And the centralization of power is going to be about power centers kind of congregating and moving into other areas. Now, Steve Pachinik, who is not trustworthy at all, as far as I'm concerned,
Agreed.
was on Alex Jones not long ago, and he was actually talking about this. And he was saying that they are going to move the center of power into the middle and the southern part of the country. That's, you look at
Denver.
Texas, you got Elon Musk is moving here. You've got all these people are moving to Texas. Joe Rogan moved here. Bad move on Rogan's part, by the way. But this is what's happening, and then those outer rim states, with maybe the exception of Florida, are essentially being depopulated on purpose.
Yep.
Like there are things going on. They want people out of that area, right? For whatever reason, to control the ports
No,
or give it the Chinese,
yeah,
right?
it's
They want them out.
Chinese. It's what's going on, and this is why it's so centralized on the West Coast. All of this chaos, because that's the nearest place in the United States to China, and China owns most of the ports. And I believe that they're behind all of this. I believe they're funding the riots. I believe that they're funding the fires. I believe that they're creating real estate. This is what happened in London.
Absolutely.
In 1966.
Absolutely.
They burned down London, and then it became the financial center of the world.
Yep.
And it was all done on purpose. And that's what they're doing. They're picking the best land. Northern California is probably one of the most beautiful places in the world. And they're kicking all of the white trash rednecks out of there. That's if you look at how they're doing it. And they did it in Oregon. I used to live in Ashland, and just north of me, Talent, Oregon, got completely fried. But if you look at the drone footage, all the trees are still there. The hillside where all the rich people live is untouched, so the fire didn't go uphill like it's supposed to do. And it's weird because I know the neighborhoods where it burned, and it was all working class and artists, poor artists that live there because it's cheap rent, right? And now it's gone. And I can tell you, I know what's going to happen there. It's really a nice place, and it's going to get taken over.
That's right. Absolutely.
And the fires are always used by powerful forces to rearrange and change things against people's will. In other words, people don't want to go a certain direction. Okay, burn them out. And it's happening here. I mean, just probably 15 miles from where I am is a 14,000 foot mountain range, and all the trees above 10,000 feet are dead because of the beetle bark. Right. Well, we are one lightning strike away.
Yeah. When they hollow out those trees, man, they're just kindling at that point.
And they won't. And they're not managing the forest.
They don't manage the forest. I went through one of those fires in Southern California when I lived in Escondido, and they had a big alpine fire there. Same deal with the bark beetle, and it was just all pure kindling. I'll never forget that fire. I mean, living through a fire is terrifying.
Yeah, and we were up in last summer. We went to both Yellowstone and Glacier National Park. I have, tons of video of mile after mile after mile of dead trees, just dead. And I'm not saying that the government is killing the trees or anything. I believe it's the beetle bark. I've talked to people who know, and they tell me, no, it's the beetle bark. My question is, how come they're not getting rid of those dead trees? It's as if they want them to have this huge conflict. I guarantee it's going to happen. It's just one lightning strike away. In Glacier alone, it will burn for weeks if that thing gets lit on fire. And same thing with Yellowstone. I mean, literally all in Colorado, all the trees above 10,000 feet are dead everywhere you go. And that you can tell your altitude when you're driving around here by the dead trees. As soon as you see a dead tree, we must pass 10,000 feet. Right. And sure enough, you look at your ultimate, and there it is, 10,050 feet or whatever. You're like, there we go. So I really think that the government and the Forestry Service are really doing us a great disservice. And I can only conclude that they're doing it on purpose. and they
Well,
want to
yeah,
burn everybody out.
yeah, yeah. I mean, this goes back to the Tartarian stuff and
Yeah.
looking at what happened to a lot of those buildings, those really beautiful old ancient buildings, which are ruins now. It looks like they're just melted right down from the top. And, it feels like we're, again, we're going through this next reset, right? And, you and
This
I
is
talked
it.
about this before. Bringing again some astrology into this,
Yeah.
Mars has been in Aries for a few months now, and it's in a retrograde motion now. On the 12th of October, it will be closer to the Earth, and it's been for a very, very long time. So it's going to be at, what is it, perihelion? It's going to be closest to the Earth. So not only have we had a hot summer, a really, really hot summer, we've also had the fires, and we've also had this Mars effect, which has been quite intense to say the least. And we're not even through it yet. I mean, we're not going to get through this Mars transit until deep into November. And it's going to continue to, work on some very hard angles through the election, with some heavy duty squares to Pluto, heavy duty squares to Saturn,
Oh no.
fire, violence. And, what we've seen with the retrograde, I'm going to bring up a case here. It has to do with this guy, Jacob Gardner. Are you familiar with what went on with Jacob Gardner?
Yeah, he's from my hometown.
Yep. So, people who are not, following the score at home, Jacob Gardner had a bar in Omaha, Nebraska called The Hive. And I saw a video of him when he was in Washington, D.C., when Trump was elected, and somebody interviewed him. He seemed like such a really nice, humble, sweet guy, was a Marine, did 2 terms for the Marines. And there was, the craziness that you're talking about was going on in Omaha, and they were going up and down the street, and they were, basically breaking things, setting things on fire. He went out with his father to protect his bar, and these 3 ruffians, okay, decided that they were going to hassle him and his father. They hit his father. One of them hit his father and knocked him back. Jacob Gardner had a handgun, pulled out a handgun, and fired 2 warning shots in the air. 2 out of the 3 left. One of them, James Scurlock, decided that he was going to go all in and choke him and get on top of him and choke him. And then Jacob Gardner had no choice at that point than to defend himself, and he took his pistol and shot him in the rib cage, and he wound up killing James Scurlock. And then what happened was the DA said that he acted in self-defense, but there was so much pressure there on a local judge who had some very, how shall we say, controversial rulings in her record, that the community was forcing her to bring this guy who had not been a federal prosecutor, was in private practice, to come in and then run a grand jury. And Jacob Gardner was looking at 95 years in prison. Okay. And and people who supported him wanted to start a GoFundMe page for him. GoFundMe shut it down. Okay. So here we are. This is a Mars retrograde thing. Like, you would think that Mars in Aries, like, it would be martial and you could protect yourself. Well, number one, he's a veteran, right? That's Mars. That's Aries. Number 2, he wound up leaving. He went to Oregon. And number 3, instead of defending himself, he ended his life. And this also gets into Chiron in Aries, which is a big deal. The last time Chiron was in Aries was in 1968. Go back and look at what happened in 1968, one of the bloodiest, craziest years in the 60s and in the 20th century. So we're going through that probably times 10 at this point in time. So the Mars retrograde piece is, the message is, you can't defend yourself now. You cannot defend yourself. You have activist judges, activist district attorneys who will support the violators, but they will not support people who are protecting their property, protecting even their own rights, even through castle doctrine, right? This is what's happening now, and it's setting incredibly dangerous precedents.
Oh yeah, there's um, radical groups are targeting people who have nice houses. The real point of what they're doing is just to get everybody's stuff. They're quite open with. I've talked to these people. A lot of them live around my area, and they're open with it. They want essentially to gather all the stuff together that's here, and then divide it equally. That's what they've told me.
Hmm.
So that's
Yeah.
what they're planning on doing. So the people who have planned ahead or have gardens, they have to give up their stuff. And
Right.
pretty much that's what they want. I should also be noted, of course, talking about what you're saying, every 80 years, the United States goes through this great turning. And the last time that we went through the turning was starting in 1941. The new turning started. And then the turning before that was 1861. And now we're heading into 2021. Exactly 80 years since those two dates, and those two dates were also marked by the two bloodiest wars that we've ever been in. 700,000 people died in the Civil War, and 300,000 people died in World War II. So I think we're, it's kind of scary. We're heading towards the same kind of time period. Things just seem to be so amped up, and you have to wonder if, with what's going on with China, if we're not headed towards a war with them in some way. The South China Sea, they're coming after Taiwan, they're shaking and rattling, and I don't know. I worry about that, and I think that in some ways it would probably end the disruption in the country if we got into a war, but I don't know if it's worth it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't. I think it's really hard to kind of really peel back the layers and try to understand, who is siding with who and where
Yeah,
those relationships are. I mean, I feel like we're in a time, especially with all this Gemini energy, of great obfuscation. And, is Xi really an enemy, or is he an ally, or is this other guy who's supposedly Xi's enemy or rival inside of China? Is he the real guy that we have to worry about? I mean, what's really going on here? Trump killed what is it? The first thing was it the TMPP, the what is it
I know what you're talking about, the trade bill that
the trade bill. Well, he killed that, right?
yeah,
But then he comes around and signs this other thing, the USPCA thing,
right.
which is basically the same thing, right? It's just like maybe the terms and conditions are a little bit different, maybe a little bit better for us. But
Well,
he basically killed one thing and then signed this other thing. And by the way, the Democrats signed off on that,
yep.
right? That's the other thing. If the Democrats sign off on it, that it's going to benefit them. So we can't always really trust kind of what's going on right now. And this is difficult because it's moving us from a high trust society into a middle to low trust society.
Very.
Whether it's on a political level, or whether it's on an economic level,
Personal.
or personal or recreational level. And if you live in an urban area right now, you need to have situational awareness.
You really do.
And even in the suburban area, this is not like you just can't think that everything's going to be business as usual, because it is not. We are living in a very, very unusual time where everything is getting kind of disturbed. And this is what Trump does with his Sun Uranus conjunction. He's a disruptor, right? That's what he does.
And he's a Gemini.
And he's a Sun Uranus in Gemini. So he's a major disruptor. And it looks like this Coney Barrett is going to be the new choice, which I am not down with, by the way. I don't think she's a good choice, but they've been targeting her for a while. And supposedly she's Scalia-like, and I'm not sure if that's any real consolation. And I've looked at her.
That's not reassuring at all.
No, and I've looked at her chart, and I've got her chart up. If you want to look at it, I've got a bunch of stuff we can look at if you want to.
Let's look at it.
So let me see if I can do a screen share here, and let me make sure I get the right chart. So I've got a bunch. Give me one sec. Okay, so what I did is I don't know her time, but when I don't know a time, I cast what's called a sunrise chart, which puts the sun on the ascendant. And I can certainly bring up a synastry chart with her and Trump. Now, we can see that she's an Aquarian, and she has the true node in Aquarius. And, out here in the outer ring, these are transits. So she's going to have the super conjunction, which is coming right around the 21st of December, which I want to bring up too, by the way. And she will ride the wave of this super conjunction. Like, this is kind of a destined moment for this person in a lot of ways, but we don't know how she's going to, shake out as a judge. Now, her Jupiter is conjunct the galactic center. That's pretty significant.
That is.
That's a really significant aspect. And we can see today, right? Here's the moon, transiting moon, pretty much right on her natal Jupiter. And if Trump makes the announcement today, astrologically, it'll be really spot on at this point, right? So the one thing that I am a bit concerned about with her is that she is, she's a Catholic, and being a Catholic doesn't bother me as much as her willingness to, quote unquote, follow the Pope, right? And the Pope is, helping to usher in Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030. Right. So if she's following the Pope's lead, we're in trouble here. Personally, I actually think that Barbara Lagoa would be a better choice for Trump on a number of different levels.
I agree with that.
She's a double Scorpio. She's got Sun in Scorpio, Moon in Scorpio, and it's a new moon. It is not a balsamic moon. This is a person who would stick to her principles and would be implacable. And also, she has a lot of planets in Libra, so she'd, like Coney Barrett does as well, but she'd be quite good at adjudication. You'll notice that Coney Barrett also has Mars in Aries, which is where Mars is right now. And so here we have transiting Mars right here at 26 degrees. Now, the one thing that I will say is that retrograde Mars will wind up opposing her Uranus. That could be problematic for her on a number of different levels. Number one, it could be problematic in the sense that there could be something that could happen to her swiftly, right? So this could be some kind of outside force intervening in her life. And that outside force could be, number one, it could be violent. Number two, it could be the intimation of something else, and she could withdraw her nomination. I would not be surprised if this could happen to her. Like, she would go to a certain point, and then all of a sudden, and we're talking again sometime in November, and this would create a lot of chaos. So with Mars retrograde in her chart, this is fairly significant. Now in 2022, she'll go through her Chiron return, and so she's got some unresolved things to go through before that. I looked at her chart with Trump, and she does have some interesting things going on with Trump. So let me see if I can bring that up here. That's not it. Where is it? Let me stop the share. I do want to get to that though. So
interesting.
Yeah, give me 1 second. Let me find the.
So something in December could happen to her.
Yeah. Like, I think that she could have a change of heart. Like, either something physically could happen to her, but it could be one of the. I mean, this is a person who has a lot of kids. 2 of them who are adopted, by the way.
Right.
And apparently she's a hardcore vax person, and she would be somebody that would tilt the court towards vaccinations. And by the way, she's also been supportive of the right to people to protest in Chicago. So she is not a panacea for the conservatives. I think she's actually probably a wolf in sheep's clothing, to be fair. Not because the thing with Aquarius is that Aquarius will always provide this kind of X factor, right? That's what Aquarius does. It provides the X factor, and it brings the potential for chaos into the mix. So here is her chart with Trump, which I think, what you really see here with, this is Trump on the inside, is you'll see the moon Mercury conjunction here, which is quite good for Trump, right? Like, he could communicate with her and she would listen, right? So this would be somebody who he could really get the ear of. What's also quite interesting is that her Saturn is conjunct his midheaven. That's pretty significant. Like, so this is like, this is authority. And in some ways, this is kind of an authority that at a certain level he would respect initially, ultimately, I think he would have a problem with her because here's his Mars in Aries. I'm sorry, Leo, and it squares right up against her Saturn. That is a conflict with authority. So I don't know if this is a Mike Pence choice or this is somebody who's part of the Dominionist crowd. I think ultimately Trump would have a problem with her. And I'll tell you who else will have a problem with her. It'll be Jared Kushner, because Jared Kushner's true node is conjunct Trump's Pluto in the 12th house. Kushner is one of these powers behind the throne. So if his true node is there and her south node is there, that's going to be a conflict. And we know that when Kushner wants to get his way, he generally tends to get his way. See Steve Bannon, right? So I think initially this could look like it could be good for Trump. Here we got this part of fortune, Moon, Mercury conjunction. We got the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction down here. Happens quickly. There could be some kind of, Jupiterian, Libran kind of ideological sort of meeting very, very quickly. But also, she's got this Mars in Aries, right? And what is it doing? It's squaring his Saturn. So we got 2 Mars-Saturn squares in this chart. Now, Trump is somebody who doesn't mind conflict, obviously. He kind of thrives on conflict. But I think too much conflict could be problematic. Ultimately, I think that this would be, at a certain level, a choice that Trump could make sort of quickly and easily. He's probably got the ear of these dominionists. But as this thing plays out, I think it would be a problematic choice, and a choice that ultimately I believe he would regret.
It's interesting because December 21st or so, that's probably going to be when Supreme Court's going to be deciding the mail-in problems and all that. And I think that's one of the reasons why the Republicans are ramming it through, because they need that vote. Because definitely there's going to be a coup. I mean, the Democrats are planning a coup. There's no doubt about it. That's why they're behind the mail. And now it's interesting because Axios, which is a millennial website, they came out and told everybody to vote in person. This is like 4 days ago. They came out and told everybody that don't do the mail-in, go and vote in person. That's, I believe, significant. I think that they must have discovered something about the mail-in. Either Trump got some kind of power to stop it or something. So the Democrats are now, and I think over the next week, you'll see this ground shift heavily. The Democrats are now moving towards in-person voting now. I believe that they realize that they can't do the mail-in. It's so easy to cancel out the mail-in ballots, not absentee. That's different than mail-in. Absentee ballots are actually at every stop. There's somebody signing a signature. Where mail-in, that's not. You can get 2 or 3 of these guys in the mail and vote many times, which is a felony, by the way, to vote more than once. So don't do it. But I
think what Trump did, if I'm not mistaken, and I think this went through the Postmaster General, this guy Louis DeJoy,
right,
is that they made a prerequisite that if you were going to have a mail-in ballot, that it had to be certified, right? That it be signed and certified. So that really puts a major crimp on that process. That means that people actually have to go physically to a post office.
It's just as hard as voting.
That's right. So I think that they've been finding huge amounts of these ballots now, just buried in places, right? Yeah. Some of them actually for Trump because they're military ballots, and these are people that have been voting from overseas, right? What's interesting, I don't know if you found this out or discovered this, but now all of a sudden the NFL wants to turn stadiums into polling places.
Saw that,
where you can vote. And one of them, of course, is the brand new SoFi Stadium in Southern California, run by Stan Kroenke, who happens to be the husband of one of the Walton girls.
Yeah, well, with their ratings dropping rapidly, I would say NFL is going to soon stand for not for long, because between the injuries and parents not letting their kids play football for fear of injury, I can't see football lasting more than 10, maybe 12, 15 years. And then I think it'll just dwindle away. I mean, they've turned it political. I haven't watched a game yet. Honestly, I watched.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I haven't watched the game.
Me too. I'm a lifelong fan, and I just can't get it going for it. There's just no enthusiasm. And then you watch it. I watched 2 minutes of the Kansas City overtime last week, and it was so bizarre playing in an empty stadium that it made me
Yeah.
feel uncomfortable, and I turned it off actually. So I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
I don't know where
Yeah.
they're going. I think that you're right. It's going to turn into balkanization, and it's not going to be like territory against territory, like in Yugoslavia, in the civil war they had there. This is almost going to be more like brother against brother, uh,
Yeah.
neighbor against neighbor, and I don't know where it's ending. I mean, I have a friend, and he was he lives here. He completely anti-gun for the whole time I've known him, like 2 years now. And then he completely freaked out, and he drove down to the gun store that's near us. And he tried to buy an AR-15. And then I asked him later, so how'd it go? And he said, oh, I can't even order one. I mean, what do you mean? He says, well, I went there. They don't have any guns in the gun store, by the way, and they don't have any ammo in the gun store. And I said, so what did you do? And I said, I told the guy who owns the store, I said, listen, here's $1,000, right? As soon as it becomes available, you can use this money to order it and then call me when it comes in, right? And I said, so that's a good idea. What did he say? He said, he wouldn't take my money. He said, there's no guarantee that I'll ever get another one in again. So I'm not going to take your money because I can't guarantee it. They're not even taking orders. And I thought, wow, this place is arming up like there's no tomorrow, right? And and I don't know, and I don't know where it's going to head. I know that a guy with an AR-15 trying to protect his house is going to be, just by walking around your property with an AR-15, you're telling everybody that you've got something to hide, right?
Right.
And then all they have to do is get together, hundreds of them, and come to your house. You can't shoot them all. And so I don't know where this is headed. And with the like Facebook and Twitter, everybody's talking to each other. So there's mass communication. So they say, hey, that dude's on top of his roof with an AR-15. He must have something. Let's go there, right? A mob riot happens, and there's nothing you can do about it. And that's where I think we're headed, some kind of Mad Max scenario. Or it could be that Trump gets reelected in a landslide, and then he like brings down the authority on everybody, because at this stage I think Americans might even be cheering authority coming down and beating the hell out of these protesters. I actually can see a lot of Americans might think that's a good idea. That scares me just as much as the chaotic one. So
Yeah.
you've got this authoritarian thing that could happen and might happen if riots start, and I think they will, on the election night. They declare Trump president and the riots start all over. I think Trump's going to call in federal troops. National Guard, whatever he has to do, and put it down. He's already said he's going to do it. I mean, he's not, he's going to put it down.
Well, I mean, frankly, he should have done a long time ago.
He should.
I mean, people say, well, he can't do it. The states and the governors have to. That's sort of bullshit.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at what happened with Kennedy and George Wallace in University of Alabama. People's civil rights were violated, and when the civil rights are violated, guess what? You can deputize people, brought them in, and this could have happened, right? And so people say we don't want to do that. Bad optics. Well, look at what's happened. We've had, businesses lost and burned, and and Trump is a disruptor, and he is, in some ways, I like that about him, the disruptive nature of Trump. On the other hand, he's got a penchant for big box lot stores. Like, he loves Fortune 100. Like, that's his thing. I'm not sure he's a Main Street guy. So, when Main Street goes away, it's kind of okay, because only the biggest and the best can now run things, right? So this is problematic, and this is what we've seen happen now. The one thing that I'm a bit concerned about is that, we will potentially get into a firefight with these people. And then what will happen? When they call the troops in, let me just tell you, right? And it doesn't even have to be U.S. troops. It could be UN troops, anybody that they call in. right? And Americans think that they're armed and they're sitting on 4 or 5 years worth of thousands of rounds of ammo. You have no idea what you'll be dealing with. No idea. You'll be dealing with LRADs, MRAPs. You'll be dealing with people that are aggressive. They know how to deal with situations. They've been practicing this stuff, crowd control, riot control for the last 4 to 5 years. It'll be like a freaking, lightning bolt will hit. And that's the part that worries me more than the clash of, the Antiphans versus the non-Antiphans.
No, so what way I look at it is that the people that got out before the virus hit, I call them the first wave. Like
Yeah.
they got out, they sensed or whatever, right? And they got out, right? The second wave is what's happening right now. These are like the Joe Rogans, the Ben Shapiro's. They have money, they have resources, and they're getting out. Okay,
Mhm.
and they're the ones that are buying up everything that's
Mhm.
going on right now in the
Yep.
rural areas, and they're pumping up home prices, and they're moving in with their BMWs and all that. It's kind of weird and obvious, and so that's the second wave, and they're going to be all right. It's the third wave that we have to worry about, because these are the people that are about to lose their apartments and houses because they are not going to be able to pay the bills, and that they're going to be desperate, and the desperation is already starting, and it's going to spread out into the countryside as these people have forced out of the cities, refugees really, and they're going to have to go somewhere,
Mhm.
and things have to be decided right away. How many people are going to come into your community from the outside? Are you going to help them? Are you going to give them a place to stay? They're mostly going to be young people, by the way, who uh, are not prepared, people under 30. So we have to deal with that. Aggressive young people who have a lot of energy. And I can tell you, they're moving into my area.
Mhm.
I see them all the time. They're coming into town with their guitar case and their dog,
Mhm.
and their drug addiction, and they're coming in, and and we don't know what to do about it in our community. We don't know what to do. I mean, uh, and it's going to get worse and worse. So I think we need to start like talking to each other about where we're going to go here,
Mhm.
what we're going to do, and it's going to get very, very serious. And as 2021 comes in, I'm going to say we're going to have a rough 4 years until 2025.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, one of the things I've been thinking about is that what the sort of the quality that has defined the West and European cultures, like rugged individualism, right? We're rugged individuals. It's we can innovate, pioneer stock, and while that's been really great, we're going to have to kind of, to coin a phrase from the left, reimagine individualism. Like,
Agree.
we're going to have to figure out how to work together. And this is part of the Aquarian energy that's coming in. And will be coming in on December 21st, that Saturn Jupiter conjunction, which is, I think, is pretty significant. And we haven't seen that Saturn Jupiter conjunction in Aquarius since 1962, which is when Kennedy is really taking off, right? This is when Kennedy, 1962,
Camelot.
Kennedy's really in his prime, okay?
Yep.
And by the time we hit 11/22/63, obviously he's written out of the script. But it's been 60 years since we've had this super conjunction in these two planets in the same sign. Now in Saturn, we saw really early on with the coronavirus, Saturn was in Aquarius, and we got the bad side of that deal, man. Everybody's locked down. We're got there's this is like, we're just gonna level everybody out. You're all gonna be the same, and
Yep.
just get used to it, right? This is gonna be the new normal. That's like the dark side of that Aquarian age.
Exactly.
Jupiter comes in and it can do one of two things. I'll bring the chart up here. I got the December 21st chart up. So Jupiter can do one of two things, generally speaking, astrologically. It can either um, sort of amplify the experience and make more of it, or it can create kind of an alternative path and maybe soften the
Saturn.
potential for the heaviness of Saturn.
Right.
So let me get in here and let me fire this thing up here, and let me get out of this. I don't want to compare it to Trump. We're just going to look at it on its own. And because it's so, and the other thing, which is quite interesting, and I know you've probably talked about this, Jay, is that there are people who said that, well, 12/21/12 wasn't really the end of the Mayan calendar. It's really 12/21/2020, which is another kind of interesting thing to bring into
It
the
is.
conversation. So let me bring this up. This is the chart for 12/21. And
Saying December, the solstice of 2021.
this is yes, this is the winter solstice, right?
Whoa.
Here we go. And we can see Saturn, Jupiter
Whoa.
at 0 Aquarius. And we have the sun at the 29th degree, the anaretic degree of Sagittarius, which is kind of important, right? Because Sagittarius represents order.
Everything's on one side.
It represents kind of a lawful order. And when we see the south node in Sagittarius, which we've seen really since the beginning of the coronavirus, we've seen order in its descendancy, right? Because that's what the south node represents.
Mm-hmm.
And we see the true node in Gemini, which is the trickster, which is, people running around in mass and setting fires, and one law for this group and one law for this group.
Right.
And we've been seeing a lot of this happening. So this is kind of in some ways a bit of a last stand for order, like at this 29th degree. And then we have Mercury in Capricorn, but this is really what you want to look at right here. This is the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, and I think this is a very significant conjunction, because we have the opportunity to. It's not even an opportunity. There's a necessity to redefine what an individual is, and we have to be able to figure out how we're going to work together. Because what's happened is that there have been a lot of groups that have been underrepresented for a very long time, and they know how to work inside of a group. Like, that's where their power comes from. We can see it, whether it's Antifa or BLM or whatever these groups are. They know how to work inside of a group structure because there's power in numbers, right?
Yep, agreed.
There is we theoretically, the individuals, and I'm not going to say white or European, it's a consciousness. There are people who have individual consciousness, and this is going to be a time and an opportunity. Now, this is a 20-year cycle, right? Because the next super conjunction will happen 20 years from now. It won't be in the same sign. So we're dealing with the next 20 years, from 2020 to 2040, where we are figuring out which way this Aquarian age is going to go. Is it going to be ruled by Saturn, where it's going to be top down and people are going to be locked down and locked in? Or is it going to be ruled by Jupiter, where there's more a sense of expansion and potential? And this gets right into these two groups that you and I have talked about, who seem to be in sort of this kind of eternal battle between how they're going to manage humanity. Right, one group wants to be hands-on and wants to have like basically a lockdown, and the other group says, well, let's let them manage themselves. And I feel like that this is really going to be a big part of the next 20 years. And I don't think it's going to be settled on 12/21, right? But I think the opening will begin to take place during that time. And I think this is a very, very significant equinox that we're dealing with, because when we get into the Mayan calendar, I'll just show you a couple of things with the Mayan calendar here, which are interesting.
So this is a little over a year from now.
This is right now, 12/21.
This is 12/21/20.
That's right. This is like we're staring it down. This is it right here.
I got you.
Right. So, I play around with the Mayan calendar a little bit. So I want to show you a couple things with the Mayan calendar, which I think are worth noting. So can you see this screen right here with the Mayan calendar? Okay. So when you get into the Mayan calendar, there are basically two calendars, right? There's Jose Arguelles' version.
Yes.
which I don't mind, by the way. I actually like his version
I do
because
too. It's
because
more
Jose,
intuitive.
he did more with the Mayan calendar than anybody, right? I mean, was he Paco Votan? Why not? I'll buy into it, right? So on 1221, we have, which is blue resonant hand. So 7, obviously a mystical number, right? So I channel in order to know. I think this is important for people to understand on the equinox, right? Because, we all have a sense of knowing. And the knowing is, as long as it's sort of disentangled from projection, right? If we disentangle our knowing from projection, it's true, it's real. When we go out into fantasy land, we have to have little checks and balances, right? But
Right.
if we understand what our knowing is, right, this is a really interesting time. I channel in order to know. Inspiring healing, I seal the store of accomplishment. With the resonant tone of attunement, I am guided by the power of self-generation. So 7 is always connected to this idea of channeling in the dream spell. Now, in the long count, it goes to one eek, okay, which is quite interesting. And eek, if I'm not mistaken, let me stop the share here. Let me get into my day signs a little bit. So, where are we? Yes, eek is the spirit of the wind, or to communicate, right? So it's about breath, it's about inspiration. And 1 has to do with unity. So I'm going to bring this up here and I'll show you again. So I would say both of these are true. Like, you could work with both of these interpretations because I think they're both valid in their own way. So when we get into eek, right, it is breath. And the tone is 1, it's unity, and it's magnetic, right? So in 1221, with the Mayan calendar, like the long count, it's about a beginning. It's about a time of inspiration. It is an inhalation of consciousness for the mind with the long count, right? So when we get into this idea of unity, it's unconditional love, the one heart, indivisible service, core vibrations, new beginnings, chalice of the infinite, right? So we have these two things happening simultaneously. We have the 1 and the 7. And hand is about doing something, right? Hand is about, putting your hands into the world.
Yeah.
It is
Work.
activation. It is work.
Right.
This is about inhalation. So the two could work together. And I would say if I could give any kind of, quote unquote sage advice, it would be take that time, the 20th and the 21st of December, just to unplug, totally unplug, get away from the news and the noise, and try to do your best to be in a place where you can be quiet, right? Because this is a very interesting time. And we're setting the 20-year intention with a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. And, the more that we can kind of inhale or bring in this idea, it means take your fucking mask off for a day or two, okay? The more that we can do that, then we're bringing in this, we're inhaling this this intention for how we want to live accordingly together for the next 20 years. So I think this is an important time, and it plays out really quite nicely. 1 with Manik, which is hand, doing something, and Imish, which is about the breath, or Eek, which is about the breath and the spirit. It's the inhalation of spirit, right? We're inhaling, we're breathing in unity, right? That's a time for real unity. You don't have to do anything. You just have to bring it in intentionally.
That's a really great thing. I think maybe we should do something on a mass scale on that day. I think it might be very much worth it. It's interesting because in mythology, Saturn, the god Saturn, would eat its children because it was told that one of his children would be his successor. And one of his wives, had a baby in secret, and that baby was Zeus, who was Jupiter.
Mm-hmm.
and Zeus overwhelmed and overcame Saturn and made a more peaceful rule after that. So even mythology seems to say that if we can get the Jupiter energy in, we can maybe not get rid of the Saturn energy, but make it go down a little bit. And a lot of people are becoming very aware that the powers that be are, using children and trafficking in children. A lot more people are aware of it now than have ever been, as far as I can tell. So maybe that's all part of it. We're moving into another area. My feeling is that that what seems to me the best of all worlds is for everybody to move out into the country with your high technology. That's what I have here. I can watch first run movies in my house.
Mm-hmm.
I can, get all the top music in my house. Everything is coming in via satellite. And at the same time, I live a peaceful life. I grow my own food. I take care of my family. And I think that it's the ideal life. And I think since we're all moving out of the city anyway, that this is a much better choice than the Agenda 2030 that they have in mind for us. Unfortunately, they seem like they're not going to back off of this. They've got a series of plans that they're going to do until we hit a 2030, when it'll all be sealed up. They're using the Maunder minimum, which is a mini ice age that we're sending into. It snowed here 10 inches on September 9th, unheard of. Even the old timers never heard of anything like this. So I think that they're using the weather, they're using the astrology, and they're putting everything into one basket, and they're moving us into a transhumanist future. That's what they want. They want us to all be on the Borg and part of the hive mind, which are watching everything you're doing, by the way. And they can also hack you. They hack your the things that you have in your brain that they're going to be using. They're going to be they're not going to be, by the way, physically attached to us. They're going to be like patches. They're not the drilling a hole in your head like in the Matrix and sticking something on you. They're not going to do that. It's a patch. They've already got it figured out. It's all done with RF, and it's a done deal. So we're moving towards that. The other thing that's interesting is, they've killed sports, and it looks like they've killed movies, because Tenet is not doing very well, the new Christopher Nolan movie. Okay, so nobody's going to the theater, and it's not.
Well, we had a great family theater in our town here, a family-run theater, which also had an amphitheater to promote live events, mostly country and western. Shut down, killed it. See you later, right? Yep. Criminal. It's a criminal enterprise.
Yep, all the family theater has been shut down. Also, what's happening is in the rural areas, the hospitals are going out of business. All of them, because everybody stopped going because they're so afraid to go to the hospital. So the hospital that we have, which is about 100 miles from here, it used to have 400 or 500 cars in the parking lot. Now it has 40 cars in the parking lot.
Right.
So we're losing our hospitals. So they're moving us. You can see how, and then what they're going to do. And my buddy Christian at Ice Age Farmer, he's constantly pointing this out. They're going to use animal-borne diseases to drive everybody out of the country. That's the plan.
Yeah.
It'll be horse disease. It'll be swine disease. It'll be cow disease. They're going to create these diseases and then say we have to not be around animals.
They're already doing that with the COVID stuff. And we had a couple people show up with COVID, and we have to shut the plant down, right?
Yep.
They're already doing. And then, by the way, that's what's contributing to the ammo shortage. You get a couple of guys working in an ammo factory, and they COVID-19. Oh, we're going to shut the ammo factory down.
Same with the guns. That's why the guns.
Yes, absolutely. And I could totally see that. And again, Jay, bringing it right back to where you started off, the fires.
Yep.
Right. And if all else fails, they'll burn you out. Right. And they want to herd you back into the megalopolis.
That's right.
And be a part of Agenda 21, Agenda 20. John Levy had a really good show recently about fountains. I don't know if you caught that one.
I did catch it. It was very interesting.
And that these fountains weren't just like fountains, right? They were there to theoretically protect the area from things like fires, right? That they didn't have a fire department, but if you had enough fountains lined up and they could project anywhere between 200 and 300 feet in the air, it could create an entire mist dome over an area, which I thought, oh man, so brilliant, really amazing technology and foresight.
Yeah, I think you find that, and it was amazing. I think you find that things that we think are built for aesthetic beauty are actually have very practical uses, and we've mistaken that when we look at especially the Tartarian architecture and the towers and the fountains and the weird fireplaces and all of that. We think we're looking at one thing when actually we're looking at something else. And the guy, Fulcanelli, who I followed, he points that out in his book, Masterpiece, Mystery of the Cathedrals. He said, everything you're looking at is wrong. You're looking at it, but you're not seeing it. And then he points out that, that what you're seeing here is like Notre Dame is not a beautiful church. It's a machine. It's an etheric machine. And once you understand that, then you get up to understand all the rest. And somebody is hell bent on getting rid of this knowledge and destroying it once and for all. And it's been going on now for about 150 years. And they've been destroying everything, and they're continuing to destroy it. We're watching it right in front of our eyes.
Oh, absolutely. It's the next level of destruction, right? Now, John Levy brought up this thing with the, whatchamacallit, Mount Rushmore and the faces of Mount. Did you see that video?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So one of the things that I thought
was just to the left of Washington, or to the right if you're Washington, that looks like it was ancient.
Right. Where did it go? Right. Where did it go?
Yeah.
So this is a really interesting kind of question, and that mountain was named the Six Kings.
That's right.
By the native tribe, the Ogallala Sioux, right? Six Kings, right? What somebody on Levy's channel brought something up that I thought was quite interesting, is that when you put V and I next to the word kings, you get Vikings. You get six kings. And that this idea of these six kings who might have been the kings that's ruled over these various territories. And it's like, wow, kind of interesting. So then I began to look at the American Revolution and the characters for the American Revolution. And it's like, I'm even looking at that in another perspective now. Who were these people really?
Really?
And what kind of stories were kind of, told or created or invented potentially about these people? And even somebody like Thomas Jefferson, who lived in Monticello. Monticello is one of the top 25 pieces of architecture in the entire planet. And, where did that go? Did they continue to create more Monticellos? Well, no. So, and I'm not saying that this is what happened, but when we begin to look at things from this perspective, maybe what we're really looking at and interpreting is something quite different. And maybe these people did exist and they had documents, but the documents were from a very different time, representing a very different kind of consciousness. And even when I look now, because for a long time I used to think, Masonic bad, Rosicrucian bad. Well, maybe that's more true now, but perhaps back during a different time, these guys were really tapped in to the stuff that you've been into for years, which is the symbolism, the sacred architecture, right? And understanding how to apply this stuff in a way that was actually helpful versus, using it to imprison us.
Yeah. So what happened is that the older Masonic orders were infiltrated and turned over mostly by people interested in child trafficking, actually. And so the real true esotericists, they've moved away. And so if you go to a Freemasonic meeting today, you won't find, you and I would be talking over their heads. They're just businessmen and, nice guys. I'm not saying that. I don't think they're really involved in any nefarious activities, although they might be. But the ones I met are just kind of regular Joes and not really interested in any of this. There is a group of Freemasons that are interested in this, and they're very interested in talking to me and other people because they're interested in the esotericism of it, and also the fact that at the base of Freemasonry is alchemy. And at
Mm-hmm.
the base of alchemy is a life extension. And
Mm-hmm.
so these are wealthy men, mostly men, who are interested in living 200 or 300 years. And that's the main reason. It's pure selfishness, has nothing to do with bettering their soul or anything, although that could become part of it. So I think we're right now reaching the end of a gigantic era and the beginning of another era, and it's our choice. Are we going to let the technocrats create a transhumanism in which we're all locked in the cities, plugged in, like a Black Mirror situation? Or are we going to go out into the country, grow our own food, and concentrate on family and friends, and bring our high-tech toys with us? I think the latter is much more appealing way to live, and I think that's where we have to go. But the war is ahead of us, and I think December 21st sounds just about the right time for things to really get going.
Yeah. And astrologically, we'll have Mars basically in the sky, right? It'll be in front of the sun until October of next year, when we have the Sun Mars conjunction in Libra, which means it'll be behind the sun. So we'll be dealing with Mars for the rest of the year.
It's
And
very ominous rising in the east right now. I can
and
tell you that. Last
and
night I watched it rising. It looked close. It looked big, and it
yeah,
red, and it looked angry.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And the interesting thing about Mars is that once it goes direct, it will spend essentially from uh, the end of December all the way through till October, going through what we call the personal signs, right?
Oh,
Aries, Taurus, Gemini,
really?
Cancer, Leo, Virgo.
How long does
So
this last?
this is going to last until October, right? When we get the Sun Mars conjunction, because Mars will do its cycle and will wind up, because right now in October, we have the Sun Mars opposition.
Right.
So we have the Sun currently in the sign of Libra, which is Venus. And we have Mars, which is theoretically in opposition, right? So you'll see that. You'll see it theoretically in the sky, right? The sun will rise in an opposite direction. I mean, Mars will rise in an opposite direction of the sun. By October of next year, we will see Mars make its complete cycle. It will be conjunct the sun. And at that point in time, it will be behind the sun. It will be hidden. So all the martial activity that we will experience in 2021 will begin to decelerate in October. But then what happens is that Mars will make its cycle through the transpersonal signs, and it will go from Libra through Pisces, and that's going to be very interesting because, to a large extent, we won't see a lot of that because of where the Mars will theoretically be placed.
Right.
But as it moves through the personal signs, that's really important, right? Mars in Taurus, that's about land, that's about resources, that's all first chakra stuff, like get it together, get it together, get it together. When Mars goes into Gemini, it's a very restless, and it will be conjunct the true node during that time. And I believe there will be a frenzy. If you haven't seen anything, you have people moving. Just wait till that happens. And you may see people move twice or three times. They may get to an area and all of a sudden people will say, you're not welcome here, and they'll have to move again, okay? So we're going to have some interesting challenges and activation points with Mars. When Mars goes into Cancer, of course, it'll be conjunct the U.S. sun during that time. That could be very tricky. Pluto opposition. I think really the kind of the best aspect for Mars coming up will be when it goes into Taurus, number one, and then a few months after that when it goes into Leo. When we have Mars and Leo, I think that could be quite good, and people might have more of a sense of personal strength and being able to do things. So look, you're going to have a chance. 2021, Mars will go through all those personal signs, and wherever they are in your chart, you're going to have an opportunity to get your shit together, and you had better do it, right?
I
This is the
agree.
time. This is the time to do it.
Action
And,
is necessary.
yeah, yeah.
Definitely. Hey, Robert, it's really been good to see you. I'm glad I'm back on the air again, and you're probably the proper guest to start this up again because you give us a perspective that other people don't have. Less practical, but still practical. You understand the dark machinations of what's going on, and you use astrology to show us what's really happening. And that's why I think you're probably one of the most important astrologers out there, because you're a realist on top of all the other things. So thanks for being
thanks,
on.
Jay. I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, it's been great always hanging out with you, and I'm glad that you're doing your thing.
I'm
And
not sick, I swear. Knock on wood.
Yeah, cool.
But okay, folks, thanks for watching, and please subscribe and hit like and all that. And let's undo all the YT BS that they're putting on us right now. Okay, and I will do the show on the Kennedy assassination. I'm just trying to figure out how to do it without getting censored. So that's also, by the way, why I dropped off. I got hit with a strike by YouTube.
I did too. I did too, by the way.
Yeah, I put up the Zapruder film. I wanted to discuss what was really going on from a filmmaker's point of view. It's drop dead, mind blowing. And I put it up, and within 20 minutes, they struck me and took it down.
What was the clause that they hit you with?
Violating the standards.
Was there any standard that they
Nope. I actually asked them, please, can you tell me exactly? I said, the Zapruder film is a public film. It's in the archives. I took it out of the archives. How can this be a violation of copyrights or anything? Please tell me. And I think that they just really freaked out when they saw what I was saying. I think the AI may have some kind of algorithm that says, do not let this part get out ever. And so boom, the hammer came down. That's another
So
reason.
I have a suggestion for you with that. I feel like if you did that and put that up on BitChute, and you did like a 10-minute video as an intro with a link to BitChute and chase people over there, I think you could probably swing that.
That's not a bad idea. Do it on BitChute and then just do a 10-minute pointer over to it.
That's right. Absolutely.
All right. I think I might do that. I definitely want you to watch it when I put it up, because it's gonna screw with our boomer generation is gonna have their brains scrambled by my interpretation of it.
Yeah.
And I've ran it by several people who know movies and effects and things, and they just looked at me and I went, "Oh my God!" So we're going to do it. I guarantee it.
Good. All right. Look forward to it.
Thank you, Robert, for being on the show. Really appreciate it. Bye, everybody. Okay,